Hi, so welcome to this tutorial about literature. This is the first installment of a few series I believe I'm going to produce for you, and through this software which is called Prezi Video Presentation, which I bought expressly to be helpful in delivering literary content to the class. So as you can see from the title, on top there is Anglo-Saxon to Bob Dylan and contemporary spoken word poetry and beyond. Beyond means also tackling modern singers or singers who were who looked after the tradition and looked up to the tradition of the modern ballad, like Joan Baez or Simon and Garfunkel, but we'll see it later at this following step. Okay, so we can start with the first topic. And is Anglo-Saxon or Old English, as you know, and of course you can read it yourself. Much of this poetry was probably, these are the words taken from your book, exactly. So if you don't know anything about it, please don't hesitate to send me some questions and I will explain it to you. Of course, this is the same lesson we did directly with you as in video conference, and so you already read the meaning. So the Anglo-Saxon poetry, we're going directly to see the poetic devices of the Anglo-Saxon poetry. So first of all, the genre. There are two genres, the epic and the lyric, one represented at its most important level with Beowulf, by Beowulf, and the other one by the Seafarer, which both we did. Okay, so these are the actual features of Anglo-Saxon poetry. The kennings, the caesura, the form and stresses, the beats. We're going to talk about it later in a minute. And the alliteration. Okay, so let's see the kennings. The kennings are daring metaphors. Daring metaphors. Metafore audaci. But then they became standard because apparently the Anglo-Saxon audience wanted something which looked unconventional. So they didn't want to call the words by the current everyday meaning. They wanted to create kennings, and the book says that the verb to ken in Old Scottish means to know. So the kennings, the way of knowing. You remember the War Road? The Where Road is the sea, la strada delle balene, and the sea is one of the ways to express the sea. Another way to express the body, for example, was banhus, bone house, la casa delle ossa, etc. And you're familiar with it. So the kennings could be very complicated, of four main words to say something, used in adjectives, and that makes it what English looks like today. A lot of adjectives referring to a single noun. It's used to this day. The caesura was the stop, the halt in the punctuation and in the voice, because we have to remember that it was meant to be sung and to be recited in public. So the caesura gave a lot of meaning with it, because it stopped the rhythm and allowed for the shope, for the bard to gather further information for the next go. The form and stresses, okay, we'll talk about it in a minute when we're talking about the Accentual Verse. And alliteration. Alliteration is repetition of the same sounds in the line at least 3 times. That was typical of the Anglo-Saxon poetry, but of course which also goes directly to modern day poetry, spoken word and rap at the same time. So let's see the Accentual Verse, and you can see here there is a short composition which is a nursery rhyme, una filastrocca per bambini, starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight, a wish am I it, have the wish, a wish tonight. So you can see the counts of syllables, but the main things are the main thing are the stresses, the four main stresses with a caesura in the middle. And this is a very common nursery rhyme used to this day to lull the kids out to bed and to entertain children. And today, so what happens today? What happens today? And we will see in a minute, but we have to talk about a little bit about accentual poetry and accentual meter to understand, because otherwise the modernity of rap, the modernity of spoken word poetry, of modern songs escapes our understanding. So accentual meter is the simplest and the oldest, as we can see from these examples, and the most natural poetic measure in English. In one form or another, it has been a constant presence in English poetry from Beowulf to the present. Accentual verse is popular. It is the meter of most nursery rhymes, as we've seen, as well as many folk ballads. Even today, stress meter provides the underlying structure for such forms as rap and, believe it or not, cowboy music, folk American music, and cowboy poetry, for example. Traditional prosodic language of a language always selects phonetic features immediately audible to native speakers. Prosody, la prosodia, cioè il ritmo di una lingua, la struttura intima di una lingua, selects phonetic features immediately audible to native speaker. For example, pitch, l'acuto, l'alto, il senso dell'alto, del tono alto, quantity, la quantità, la durata, syllable counts, il numero delle sillabe, accent, assonance, consonants, alliteration, these things which we made, we are familiar with because we studied it in the poetry pages of the book. Not only the poetry pages of the book, but also you did it probably in Italian, you did it in French when you talked about maybe literature in the French language. So, audible to the speakers and arranges one or more of them in expressive patterns. So if we compare English to other languages, so French, the most common at least, the ones we know, Spanish, French, German, whatever, I don't know, Dutch, English is very strongly stressed, especially compared to the Latin languages. Is strongly stressed. Speech stress in English conveys meaning. Speech stress in English conveys meaning, which means that if I accentuate, if I stress a word, it means I'm underlying the importance of the word in the line, in the sentence. The more meaningful a word, the stronger speech stress it receives. It was therefore almost inevitable that stress would provide the basis for most English meters. First in purely accentual form, and later in accentual syllabic developments. So we saw the syllabic developments when we have analyzed the unit about poetry, And we talked about, for example, metric feet, I piedi metrici. We saw that the most common metrical foot in English is the iambic pentameter, pentametro giambico. Il giambo è l'unità metrica che prevede, it's the metric unit which foresees that provides for a beat which is stressed, unstressed, atono tonico, like the beat of the heart. It's the book said, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. That's the iambic, that's the most common. But then that you have trochaic, you have spondee or spondic, you have anapestic, a meter. You have different kinds of meter with more syllables. But the first more, we could say, genetic form of verse is accentual meter in English. So the syllable counts came later. But and nowadays it's combining the two, actually. And so from modern poetry is basically a mixture of those. So the basic principle of accentual verse are stunningly simple. So remember this. There is, in fact, only one rule. There must be an identical number of strong stresses in each line, like the poem we said, like the poem you are watching before you, the nursery rhyme. Stress verse does not require any set number of syllables. So the syllables may vary, but the important thing is to make the ear accustomed to the rhythm, you need to have the same rules, so the same syllables. That's why Anglo-Saxon was so, it's an oral literature. That's the origin of all literatures. From the Babylonians to the Greek, it's oral. So the ear has to be filled with a taste of music, which comes naturally from a certain language. Okay? So stress verse does not require any set number of syllables per line or any set arrangement between stressed and unstressed syllables. Accentual verse demands only an audible and regular number of natural speech stresses per line. This is the very important thing. That's why English is so simple and it's so direct in its way. And the direct and simple nature of accentual verse explains its central importance for oral poetry. Even a child, and that's why I wanted you to do something creative with literature. Not just analyze it, but be able to master it and to try to compose your own verses, which we did, and I saw that you were very good. And I actually invite you, I hope to inspire you to become more creative and more daring in your creations. Even a child can master the meter without recourse to pen and paper. No wonder most nursery rhymes are written in accentual measures, because the children just drink the words and they feel the ears, and that makes a real pleasure. That's very natural. Nursery rhymes can have between 1 or 7 stresses per line, but this is not very important. They vary a lot. So going back to modern days, we see that today. And today, what happens today? Who are the closest depositories of this tradition? The fine narrators, which with the mastery and rhyming use of similes, using refrains, etc. Somebody who can still beautifully recreate that magic narration made of rhythm and poetry. The answer, you can see that, is rappers. Rap, for most people, is the acronym of rhythm and poetry. But I've made some inquiries into Google. I've Googled it, and it seems that everybody has agreed upon this definition. So you may find people who don't think this is the right explanation of the word rap. Okay, so let's move on. And to move on, we had to go back to another topic. Okay, so the next topic here, you can see the words rappers, scops, it's how it is written, but the right pronunciation is shop or shope. We will see that. And spoken word poetry. Let's move on. Okay. So let's start from the Anglo-Saxons. In Anglo-Saxon culture, the poet or shope, had a special role, part historian, part priest. He knew all the legends of the clan. He was also the keeper of a rich poetic vocabulary, which he combined in different ways to compose an improvised poetic composition performed in public, accompanied on a stringed instrument. We saw the harp. The harp was one of the best. You can see also in the picture there. Here, you can see the picture over my head. Okay, this very one here. You can see a bard or a shope with a harp singing to a king or whatever in the court. Right, the minstrels, another word in the Middle Ages that came to replace shope was minstrel, minstrelsy, minstrels, the troubadour and trouvère of France. These are the words, actually, I put it there, but these are the words taken exactly from your book, so you should be familiar with that. Let's move on a little bit. And this entails the fact that rap poetry can be considered poetry. Can shopes be compared with rappers? So for some, there's lots of elements in common, because both are expected to compose the verses or rhymes spontaneously, while at the same time keeping within strict metrical rules, which probably even the most rappers maybe are not very educated, but in spite of that have a sense of rhythm, particularly keen on the rhythm, and they can make a very, very good poetry. And so on top, here you can see one definition which actually is very negative towards rappers. It says, read it to you. Let me say, okay. Maybe if we underpaid these modern mumble rappers, in mumble, to mumble vuol dire biascicare, dire qualcosa tra sé e sé che non si sente nemmeno bene, non sono, il mumble rap è quel rap biascicato, no? Che quasi si fa fatica a capire, anche un madrelingua fa fatica a capire. And so the mumble rappers, if we underpaid these modern mumble rappers, se noi pagassimo poco questi rappers e pagassimo di più gli insegnanti, dice il brano, and overpaid teachers, we would have smarter kids and less shitty music. So this is very derogatory and review against rappers. So in favor of teachers, he would favor a more higher pay for teachers, so that they could teach more education to students. Would teach more things to students and eventually have better music. All right, so let's move on to see. I made so I'm getting out of the screen in this way. So this is what, and the picture I found, and I put, so I found also the who these people are, and I put the name on top. So we can, from left to right, from top to bottom, you can see Eminem, then Kanye West, then Jay-Z, then 50 Cent, the Coolio, Snoop Dogg, Lil Wayne, Dr. Dre, Puff Diddy, Kendrick Lamar. Okay, so these are some reviews I found, some in favor, some so-so, some more objective, some against. Let's read it. A lot of rappers contain lyrics and videos that are thuggish. A thug è un delinquente, insomma, è un in italiano adesso mi viene in mente questo, delinquente, un bullo, ecco, un violento, qualcuno così, So are thuggish, and a lot of people don't consider that as art, but still, most rappers always have a story to tell, even if it is showed in a negative way. Rap is unique, and most artists are modern-day poets. So, all in all, this is a very, very positive review. Let's see the one on top. This is not very good. Rap is a disgrace to poetry, and especially the songs that do nothing but focus on materialism and escapism. This is not very, very nice. Let's read the middle one. The middle one says, rap is a modern form of poetry. It stands for rhythm and poetry. So this review gives for granted that the acronym means rhythm and poetry. Suddenly, a lot of today's rap has seemed to completely forget about poetry. People automatically assume, oh, the dude's black and he's making pop music, so it must be rap. It's rap. So, this is a stereotype, uno stereotipo, no? Quindi il tizio è nero, fa della musica pop, musica popolare, quindi deve essere per forza rap. Just because they're black or whatever, this doesn't mean. Non è perché uno è nero e fa un po' di musica e per forza deve essere rap e per forza deve essere una bella musica che avrà successo. It's not rap. Rap is rhythm and poetry, not pussy, 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 money, weed, pussy, 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 money, weed. This is a derogatory way in which it's synthesized a certain way of making music, talking about sex, about money, about drugs. This is not, is not enough if you say these words of F words that you are a good rapper. This is not the question. So this median review reveals a little bit more objective about rappers. Okay, can be an art, but a lot of people involved in rap are not very good. Are not very good artists because they're just foul-mouthed people who say bad words and think they're doing a form of art, which is not the case. Rap is in a distinct. The last review says rap is a distinct art form, but it is more akin to poetry than music. So this review seems to be placing rap more towards poetry than music. The vocals are spoken in poetic voice, neither song nor prosody. Poetic devices are utilized extensively, so this is a good way to make a bridge towards the next topic, which will be spoken word poetry. And this is very good. So it's more like poetry than music. Poetic devices are utilized extensively. Metrical structure, accents, alliteration, rhyme, consonants, extensive use of adjectives, adverbs, metaphors, simile, and imagery. So, imagery è tutto l'apparato retorico di un poeta, di un artista. Qui si parla di Shakespeare sotto, vedete? We're talking about imagery, simile, metaphor, the rhetorical figures of speech, quotes and references to other spoken and written word art. The meaning is encoded in the lyric, which for some artists encompasses a larger published vocabulary than Shakespeare. Can you imagine? This review puts the people in rap at the top of them when it's truly a good expression that they are using. a bulk of imagery which is not inferior to Shakespeare's own. That's incredible. That's why I wanted you to be familiar with this as well. So let's move on. Let's move on a little bit. Okay, so here am I back on the schedule. Okay, we have rappers and shops and spoken word poets. Okay, in particular, spoken word poetry. You can see the poetry slam. Che cos'è slam? Slam è una canzone poetica. It's a competition, poetical competition. And spoken word poetry deals with something which was very traditional. Also in Tuscany, there were the poeti berneschi who, in the peasant culture, were going from festival to festival, from town to town, and they had competitions with one another. And so there's something which is also familiar with our culture. Spoken word poetry can encompass or contain elements of rap, hip-hop, storytelling, theatre, jazz, rock, blues, and folk music. That's why I wanted you to be very familiar with this, because it bears to the modernity and to your own life and to your own maybe taste, and to be more aware of what you do when you select music, etc. Characterized by rhyme, repetition, improvisation, and wordplay, spoken word poems frequently refer to issues of social justice, politics, race, and community. Okay, race, community, politics, justice is more evident in the work of Samantha Gorman, which we'll see later, maybe in another issue of the tutorial. And here the first is Kate Tempest, though. Okay, let's find her. Here she is, very young girl. Well, now she's in almost 36. She was born in 1985, and she became famous when she was only 23, 24, something like that. And we're going to hear from her own voice, Brand New Entrance. This poem, which was her first success, and also I put the name of another collection, whose main poem is, of course, Hold Your Own. Okay, here it is. We are going to find the recording, which I have here. The recording of Brand New Entrance, Kate Tempest. Here we are. So we're going to see it in a minute. I'm going to get out and make it bigger. All right. Okay, here we are.
All that we have here is all that we've always had. We have jealousy, tenderness, curses and gifts. But the plight of a people who have forgotten their myths and imagine that somehow now is all that there is a sorry plight. All isolation and worry. The life in your veins, it is godly, heroic. You were born for greatness, you can believe that, you can know it, you can take it from the tears of the poets. See, there's always been heroes, and there's always been villains. And yes, the stakes may have changed, but really there's no difference. There's always been heartbreak and greed and ambition and bravery and love and trespass and contrition. We are the same beings that began, still living in all of our fury and foulness and friction. These are everyday odysseys. We have dreams, we make decisions. The stories are there if you listen. The stories are here. The stories are you. And your fear and your hope is as old as the language of smoke. You know, the language of blood. The language of languishing love. The gods are all here, because the gods are in us. The gods are in the betting shop, the gods are in the cafe, the gods are smoking fags out the back. The gods are in the office block, the gods are at their desks, the gods are giving more and getting less, the gods are at the rave and they're 2 pills deep into dancing, the gods are in the alleyways laughing, the gods are at the doctors, they need something for their stress, the gods are in the toilets having unprotected sex, the gods are in the supermarket, they're working home, they can't stop checking Facebook on their phones, they're in a traffic jam, they're on a train, the gods are watching adverts, the gods are not to blame, working for the council, now they're on the dole. Now they're getting drunk, pissing their wages down a hole. The gods are in their gardens, it's raining, they're watching cars, man. The gods are in the classrooms and those poor things don't stand a chance. The gods are trying to tell the truth is hard to say. The gods are born, they live a while and then they pass away. They're in a crowded street, it's too much, they feel sick. Sure there must be more to life, but they don't know what it is. These gods ain't got no oracles to translate their requests. These gods have got a headache and a payment plan and stress about when next they'll see their kids. They are not fighting over favourites. They're just getting on with it, they are the brand new age.
Okay, let's go back. And after Kate Tempest, it's the turn of Samantha Gorman. Do you remember her? Samantha Gorman, this is the young lady who held the inaugural speech at Joe Biden's, when Joe Biden swore in as new president of the United States. I think it was the 21st of January 2021. Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman. And Amanda Gorman is the one, and the mother tongue teacher Daniela also asked you to comment upon the last words of this very poem, which is called The Hill We Climb. But this is we're going to hear her voice directly here. Okay, I'm going to disappear to make you enjoy the poem in total relaxation. Going to find it here on my mobile phone. Just a minute. Okay, so we have Samantha Gorman.
Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is hours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the wind-swept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there was always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
So the very last words you remember, because it was the title of your assignment with the mother tongue teacher, and I just let you drink the words. The final part was not covered because I wanted you to just be immersed after being launched into the hearing of this beautiful poem, just to figure out the words, because they are not difficult. And that's beautiful. You can do that yourself by listening to it again and then looking up to the whole text, which I provided only in part. Okay, so I think we're approaching the end of this final part, this part. Okay, so we're approaching a new chapter in the ballads, which I will deliver later. And so I'm trying to stop it and then little bit taking up some breath and recover some ideas and be ready in a few minutes to go on with the recording.